My name is Gabriel Ramos. I've been a subject of racism. From a very young age, I've been called spick. I've been called corn picker. I've been called a plethora of racist names that you would not believe would come out of people's mouths, especially out of kids 8, 9, 10 years old. Sadly enough, you learn to deal with it, but what really set me off is when some of my closest friends decided to go and scratch corn picker into my tray at lunch and throw my lunch all across the lunch table, which sent me into an incentive to create a program that really educated kids on what it really is to be a good citizen and be educated about racism. I just want to see this type of behavior stop, and I think I'm making a step to help that. I interviewed successful men of different cultures to get their experiences and views on intolerance. Do you remember the first time you were called a racial slur or treated in a prejudicial way?
Yes.
What would that be?
That was probably 5 years ago. I was in my office seeing patients in my office as a doctor, and one of my patients, who I've seen before multiple times, she said she is going to fly to Texas to move to go like for a vacation, and she asked me, is it okay for her to fly to Texas? Because if I know anything, something's going to happen, I need to tell her. And I told her, I'm not sure what you mean. It's like, if you hear anything because where you're from. I did not. I did not. I told her, no, I did not hear anything in particular. I'm not sure what you're referring to. She was referring to the fact that I was Middle Eastern, and if I knew anything because I'm Middle Eastern, I know about, any plans of Middle Eastern people blowing airplanes. And that was in my practice, and she was my patient. I did not really do anything. I stepped out of the room for a couple minutes. I calmed down again, and she remained my patient after that. I wasn't going to do anything as mean, basically, to retaliate. But that was probably the first time I heard something for that magnitude. It's kind of shocking, actually.
It's actually two experiences. When I first came to the U.S., the way I was treated at the airport wasn't appropriate. Even though I had all, everything was appropriate. I didn't have anything illegal, but it wasn't appropriate. And then the first time I was leaving the country, also I went through the same thing. I had to go through extra security check 3 times, I'm guessing because where I'm from. I was, they were saying that it was a random extra security check, but the same trip 3 times, it makes me, wonder how random it was.
I was called a spick, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I had just painted a bike that I had just found, and I was proud of this bike. Only there was one of my neighbors, his name was Anthony. He came up to me really angry. I didn't know what I did wrong. I thought he was my friend, but I could see it in his face that he was really angry, and all he said was that I was a spick. I didn't know what that was until several weeks later when I was talking to one of my cousins, and they told me what it was. So it was really hurtful, and I still remember to this day. I remember his face particularly. He was just so angry at me, but I still to this day don't know why.
I was standing in a line to get some food, which the volunteers were allowed to actually eat for free. And there was a man who was behind me who essentially had some sort of a notion that I shouldn't be where I was. I don't know if he thought I came after him or whatever, but I was there clearly ahead of him. And in his frustrations, in his ranting and raving, he started using my Indianness to justify his anger. And I was surprised because before that, nobody in the United States had actually done any of that kind of stuff. So it was a little bit surprising. Other people felt very embarrassed, and basically we accommodated him in front of us and let him go, so to say, ahead of us. And he was gone.
As a teenager, I can remember being called a nigger quite often.
What is the stereotype of your culture that you dislike hearing the most, and why?
That we are terrorists and we blow stuff up. I understand there's a lot of violence in the Middle East, in a very tumultuous area. There's a lot of fighting. It's an older, very old culture. There's a lot of changes happening in the region, and most of the violence is currently in the Middle East, which does not help my stereotype. But most of the Middle Eastern people are very peaceful people. They don't want to really blow anything up. People want to live their life. It just bothers me when people think I'm a violent man, or I have, way different motives than any other person. It just kind of bothers me.
I think it's just, it's not the culture as much as just being from the Middle East that sometimes automatically comes with the idea that you have to do with some of the, something to do with terrorism or something. Not anymore, but when I first came in, it's just, the minute you say that you're from Syria, you feel that you're not that welcome. Not everywhere, but it happened a few times where, the minute people know that they're, you're from Syria, it's just, it creates that, kind of barrier between you and them, even though it's, regardless of your religion. So just where you're from, that sometimes has some effect.
We're here to take other people's jobs. That we're opportunists. That a lot of people of Hispanic nature or Hispanic origin, they're gang members. That they come here to steal things, and it's not fair, because I think in a whole, the community is a very hard-working community, very family oriented. Who and I think, like every culture, we try to do our best to give a good example to our family.
Truthfully, I don't think it's, I haven't never been subjected to a stereotypical comment that was verbalized in a specific way. So it's always been non-specific. I get the feeling that people are a little bit unhappy that people who are Indian come to America in professional capacities and, so to say, become somebody's boss who grew up here without actually growing up and paying their dues in the United States. And that's, I think, the one stereotype that the second, third, and higher generation Americans probably resent. Although, again, I have never had a first-hand whack at it, so to say.
A person of color can't become somebody successful. I don't like to hear that, this person can't become just as successful in a career as anybody else. And I guess some kids may tend to believe that they can't be things when they're put down enough.
What do you believe causes intolerance?
I think people are not informed very well. It's lack of education.
I think it's lack of knowledge. I think when, people don't know much about other cultures, when people don't know much about who you are, you shouldn't I don't, the fact that people still talk about skin color or religion or even political views, to me is just doesn't make sense to me. It's just who you are. Doesn't matter where you're from or what's your color, or where you're from. You didn't choose where you came from. What's your color? You didn't choose what's your skin color. Your political views and your religion, you're free to believe in whatever you want as long as you're a good person. Why do I care about what your beliefs are? So I think it's just lack of knowledge, or not having this open mind to accept other people for who they are, not for their color or where they come from.
I think the lack of knowledge about a certain culture. I think people don't nowadays. I think part of the issue is that we're all busy, but I think we just don't take the time to get to know the person behind the skin. Just because I'm darker color doesn't mean I'm any different than anybody else. I think we all have feelings. We all have goals. We all have aspirations, and unfortunately, it's harder for some people to reach those goals than others. But we still have feelings. I mean, we still have feelings that get hurt, particularly when people have preconceived ideas of what we are as a group, instead of taking us as one person at a time.
Anxiety, fear that somebody will possess something that you like without giving you a choice to give it up.
Ignorance causes intolerance. Not knowing the people that you're intolerant of, not really knowing their backgrounds. People are basically all the same. We laugh, we joke, we have fun. All cultures do it, but when we don't understand a culture, we tend to be prejudiced towards that culture.
Does racism only affect the person being called racial slurs or being treated poorly, or does it also affect the people around the person?
It does affect everybody. I mean, it affects even my wife, who's not of Middle Eastern descent. She's Irish. She's an American Irish, and she gets affected by it too. My kids are half Arabs, and they all suffer from it also at school. So it affects everybody.
I think it ultimately hurts everybody. It just doesn't hurt that person that's being called a slur. Of course, it hurts that person, but my biggest fear is, because of my name, my kids get hurt, because ultimately they carry my name, and it's unfair. But I think the other thing that it happens is that it makes people bitter. It makes people react differently, and certainly it makes people retreat. So by me feeling like I'm being mistreated, people don't get the benefit of what I can offer. So in essence, it hurts everybody.
Racism affects everybody, including the person who is the one dishing out the racial behavior. It affects them too. I think again, it's a manifestation of xenophobia or stranger anxiety, in my opinion. So anxiety, as we know, doesn't just make the other people anxious. The person who is the culprit is actually the most anxious of all of them.
Well, it affects everybody, because the people that are yelling the racial slur, if there are people with them, they hear that person do it. Now it's cool. It's cool to do it, so they're going to do it too. You're actually encouraging that person to conduct themselves the same way you are. As far as the people that are being called the racial slurs, they are starting to think that this is a way of life. So those people don't like me, and this is a bad experience for me, and I'm going to keep this, I'm tucking this experience away. If I get enough of those experiences, now I have my own prejudices towards people of that race or culture, whatever culture is saying something to them. You know, it's bad. It's ignorance towards the cultures.
What do you believe is the hardest toll of racism or intolerance for others?
It will create a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of bad feelings, and what always concern me is how malinformed or how angry that person is. And we all heard about the incidents where people got hurt by somebody who thinks they are of a certain race, and they got injured or got shot or something like that. And I think that's probably the worst case scenario. I think it's a disaster. There's any discrimination based on race, or it's a very serious problem.
I every time I had to deal with an experience, I felt, or I dealt with an experience, I felt sorry for that person, but the effect on me, it doesn't really affect me much, because I know who I am and I know what I do. And if someone doesn't want to accept me for who I am, then to me it's a big deal. It's his choice. But I feel sorry for that person, because we're in 2014. By now you would think that people would be open-minded, learn how to accept each other, and it doesn't affect me much. I won't say that I'll be happy when this happens, and but it's just I feel sorry for them. I even had experiences with patients when they're very sick and you save their life, and then the minute they wake up and they start talking to you and asking about where you're from, I've had few situations where the conversation was very racist, despite the fact that I saved that person's life. But instead of appreciating what I did, I heard inappropriate comments just because when I was asked where I'm from, and I said I'm from Syria. So it's just, but would that change the way I treat the person? No. Would that change the way I live? No. I am who I am. If the other person doesn't want to accept me for who I am, it's their problem. On my end, I keep doing what I do. What I do and the way I live and who I am is not, to make other people happy. It's just, that's who I am and that's what I do. If there are people who won't accept me for who I am, I don't know what to tell them, what to say. It's just, it's sad. It's too bad that, like I said, it's 2014 that people still talk about this stuff, but it happens.
Somebody is being treated unfairly or being mistreated by whether it's words or actions, that person that's being mistreated often tends to either do they do a couple of things. They either retreat and keep to themselves, and I think ultimately that person doesn't share their talents, and everybody has their own talents. So if I'm, for example, if I'm being called a racial slur in a specific town, I probably would tend not to go there, and I think those people would not benefit from my experiences and my knowledge. The other thing that it would hurt is actually the person that's being intolerant. It hurts them too, because they really don't get to expand their wealth of being a person. That person that actually called me a racial slur, I mean, I still know who he is, and I think it provincializes them, and they stay in that life that they've gotten themselves into. So it does hurt everybody. not just a person that's being called a slur.
A person who is not necessarily racist becoming racist because of racism done to them. So, and when they become racist, the cycle just keeps going.
Why is tolerance or education about tolerance important to you?
It's very important for everybody because we're not all the same. Everybody comes from a different background, and every race had a problem along the way. That you cannot go saying that all Germans are Nazis. You can't say that all Arabs are terrorists. You can't say you can't because everybody comes from a background, and it helps everybody to become one society, to become very productive and happy eventually and successful.
Doesn't matter where you're from or what's your skin color. What matters to me is who you are. You can come from the best place in the world, and yet you can be the worst person on earth. So, and when the fact that people still talk about skin color is just disturbing, because again, you didn't choose your skin color. You just were born this way. What you choose is what you do with your life, and that's what matters. So if you're a good person, you choose to follow the good path, and you're productive, and you provide to the society. So who cares where you came from, or what's your color, or where your grandfather came from? It's just who you are and what you do.
I think it opens it gives the opportunity to for everybody to know about other things rather than just keeping to themselves. I think if you go to other countries, there's the people that are the most successful are the people that actually open themselves to other cultures. You see very successful people in probably in this country, but my experience is that in other countries, the people that speak 5 languages are the most successful because they know about that other culture. They get to learn about that other culture. They enrich their lives a lot more, and they become more well-rounded. So I think that's one of the main things that benefits. That there's a benefit for people being multiculturalized.
Tolerance is important because I think it brings down the social heat, so to say. It reduces the temperature in society to a tolerable level where we could then start expecting some more civilized behavior. So accepting other people the way they are and bringing their differences into your world in a positive sense lowers your sense of anxiety, because again, you don't feel that urge to protect what you have, because you essentially should learn that when somebody new enters your environment, they actually bring stuff with them. They don't necessarily take stuff from you.
Education about tolerance is important because I truly believe that most people are good people on this planet, and the cure for that racism is education. I think that generally a person, once they start to understand a culture, and not just understand it by reading something in a book, understanding that culture by actually rubbing shoulders with people of that culture, then that ignorance and those walls start to collapse, and that would be the greatest thing as far as education would help diminish racism.
What is something you would want people to know about your culture?
How much time do we have?
Oh, we have as much time as you need.
It's not really. It's most of my culture. Most of the people most of the people I know are very peaceful people. Very, very family oriented. They love their families. They love life. I've never known anybody who's violent, and I know a lot of people across many continents. It's a lot of misunderstanding where, and I see where the misunderstanding comes out. Sometimes might come from. It's my culture is very peaceful, very old. Um, and we like just to live peacefully.
When I first came to the country, I was surprised with how much people didn't know about where I came from, about the Middle East in general, how like the impression that they had, and how the media can be deceiving and can give you the wrong information or can point you toward one direction, and how people really did not, and I was surprised how many people didn't really care to learn not only about other countries, about other states. I was surprised how many people don't care about even learning what's in other states, what's in other countries, what's in Europe, what's in the Middle East, what's in the Far East. I was really surprised. Like I said, they had an impression, and I think it was mostly because of the media. But I was surprised. Like I thought that people would be more open, or they will try to learn more. But I don't know if it's because people are so busy with their daily, stuff, or it's or just they don't care about learning about other, places in this world. But to me, it's not only. I felt that people needed to learn not only about where I came from. I felt that people needed to learn about everywhere, because I've been to many places in this world, and I've had many experiences when I discuss with someone an experience that I lived somewhere, and I was surprised how much they did not know about other countries, regardless whether it's my country or where I came from, or it's other countries. So and even there are many situations where I was surprised that people, like I said, didn't even know about other states, not other countries. So I think people should, start opening their mind, just learn about other stuff, other cultures, especially when you talk about the U.S. The U.S. is a melting pot. People came from all over, and it's nice to learn about all the cultures. It's nice to me. I love learning about every time I go somewhere. I try to learn about the culture, about the people, about what they do, what they believe in. Not that it makes any difference in terms of accepting them or not. It's nice to learn about other cultures.
I think Dominicans, like in many other Latin American countries, they work to live. They want to be successful. They want to have people be proud of them, just like in everywhere else. But ultimately, their most important asset is their family. Not how much money they have, not the things that they possess. It's a culture about others. We serve people. We work hard because we from a young age we're taught that you are not given things, you should earn them, and then we give back, and that's something that's very important that people should know about my culture, the Hispanic or the Latino culture. We're very rich in our history. Our history dates back all the way to Christopher Columbus in this country. And not only are we in the United States by assimilation, but we've been here for a long time. So we are immigrants. but we've been here longer than people think that we've been here.
Well, the one thing that people probably don't know about Indian culture is the tradition of acceptance. So unlike majority of the religions or faiths or whatever you call them, the Hinduism, which is the largest religion of India, preaches acceptance in the sense that it never attempts to tell anybody to become a Hindu. Although if anybody wants to become a Hindu, they are always welcome. There is no bar, there is no blockade because of birth or extraction or anything of that sort. There's been multiple examples of that throughout the history of Indian subcontinent, where people have migrated all the way as far away from the Middle East and Iran, and have become a very integral part of the Indian tradition or culture. The Parsis, for example, are a classic example, who was Zoroastrian religion, who came to India and basically enriched the society. When they landed off their ship, the soldiers of the king of that port basically arrested them and brought them to the king. And the king was a very noble human being, so he basically told the immigrants that his kingdom is full, there's no room for anybody. So he took a cup of milk, filled all the way up to the brim, and said, "This is who I am, this is what we are, we have no room, so go back home." And the Parsis were very wise. So the wise men out of the crowd came out with a cup full of sugar, put it in milk, and stirred it, and gave it back to him, saying, when you add sugar to milk, it doesn't expand the volume of the milk, it dissolves in it, it actually makes it sweeter and more desirable. And since then, they have become a complete part of Indian society. So I think, a lot of people don't know that about India. They feel that India is a multi-religion, multicultural, large country, second largest country in the world. Lots of population, lots of camels and cows on the street. But I think the one thing they don't know is this tradition of acceptance, which I think is very similar to the American culture.
We are very vocal people when we're having a good time. We like to laugh, and we like to, I think we get a little loud when we're having a good time, and it's enjoyable. My culture doesn't necessarily have to be a black or white thing. My culture is who I hang out with. My culture is what music I listen to, me. That's nothing really to do with the race, because once I'm into that music deeply enough, the people that I'm going to identify with are going to identify with me because of what I like to do, what I like to listen to, where I like to go. And that's going to be my culture. The Italian culture are known to be very family-oriented and big on big dinners and eating as a family. That's an Italian culture. That's in their culture. But that's not necessarily only something that they have, I enjoy going to certain places. People that all different races may enjoy going to those same different places, and now they're part of my culture. I could talk to you about wrestling, you won't know anything about it, but if I had some wrestlers here and I throw out a couple moves, instantly I'm in their culture, and they understand what I'm talking about, they understand the moves I'm talking about, and we identify. And blacks and whites can do that. Blacks and Hispanics, whites and Hispanics, we all can be part of the same culture just by enjoying the same things. I mean, if you love being with your family, cooking with your family, and having those big picnics or whatever, that's a great thing, but we're not the only culture that likes that. We're not the only people that like that. Everybody likes that,
If you met a child or a teenager that was enduring racism, what advice would you give them?
Not to engage themselves in that hatred, to step above it, and just to not to really be part of the problem, to really to go above it, and just I think that's the thing to do. To face violence with violence, or racism with racism, is a mistake, because I think you can't fix basically two wrongs will make it right. If somebody's being ignorant and intolerant, the best thing to do for yourself is step back, get away from that situation, and again, it depends on your position. If you're young in school, probably should alert the school. If you're older, like me, you hope for some kind of education will happen along the way. But I think engaging in this discussion with that particular person is not okay anywhere. I think just to step above that is the best thing you could do, personally.
You know, you don't do it for other people, you do it for who you are. You know, that's how I was raised. I was raised to, you know, be productive, to be a good person, to respect other people for who they are. You know, to me, I don't care what your religion is, I don't care what's your skin color, I don't care where you come from. Well, what I care about is that you're a good person. That's what makes a difference. I mean, you're a good person and productive person. It's, you know, if you're providing to this society, then why do I care, you know, how your hair looks like, or what your skin color is, or whether you wear glasses or not? That's your personal issues. So, but you know, my advice is just, you don't do it for other people. You just do it because that's what, you know, that's what you do. That's how you were raised, and that's how you should be. And you shouldn't let, you know, these experiences affect you.
I would tell that person that that's a passing phase. You know, we've all, I think, pretty much everybody that I know that's either a relation or somebody that's in my culture has actually gone through it. And I think one of the things that I would tell them is that we all learn from those things. We learn what we should do and what we shouldn't do. We learn that there are people in this world that need to be educated. And perhaps it's our job to actually be that person that educates that person that does not have the knowledge or the wherewithal to understand that it shouldn't be about one, it should be about all. And that things get better. Things get better, you know. You shouldn't retreat. You should proceed and actually teach. And only by abolishing ignorance will that feeling of inferiority that people get when they're demeaned go away.
I would say, you know, there are two big issues. One is you have to realize that the person who is angry at you for your appearance or your extraction or your language or your smell or whatever it is, that person is the one who is in need for help. And so instead of becoming the victim, realize the victim. That person is actually the victim who needs help. That's one of the ways of crying for help. And the second is never really get affected to the point where you start doubting your own extraction. You know, so be proud of who you are. And everybody, again, is like sugar that the wise men added to the milk. They always enrich wherever they go. You know, and I think that's what younger people especially have to realize, because when you're from a minority and you get subjected to these onslaught, it's very common to feel small about yourself and your kind, and instead of that, you know, endure it and feel good about it.
That no matter what a person says about you, it's and the racial things that they say, when they're not true, that person can say whatever they want and doesn't make it true about you. You know, you are who you are, and you know, just because somebody says you're this or you're that, and they put a bad name attached to it. If that's not who you are, then you don't let it bother you. Don't let it bother you. Know who you are. You know? And part of my answer to that is religious. You know, God made us who we are, and I don't feel that, you know, that's where I get my confidence. You know, I am what God made me, and I'm happy to be that, what He made me, and nobody can take that away. and nobody could say that I'm something bad.
319,107,400. 7,100,000,099. Every 8 seconds, a new person comes into this world. One individual with hopes and wants and dreams. Different, like the crystals of a snowflake. It's an age-old problem that we humans often feel the need to break someone down to feel better about ourselves. Is it necessary? I say no. This is more than the words that you say. This is something far more substantial. This is how we think. It is what we think and how we interact with people. The family on the news, our teammate, the student sitting at lunch. You didn't choose your skin color, and neither did I, or your hair, or your eyes, or anything for that matter. But you control how you treat people, and what you deem to be like you. Well, that you see, is all your choice, from thought to words to actions. Even if you're just cracking jokes at your friends, it's wrong. It's wrong because it's a father, it's a mother, a healer, a humanitarian, a doctor, a teacher, an officer, a coach that you just cracked on. If your goal every day is to tear someone down, to get that laugh, then you've lost more than you know. You hurt you and them. Intolerance is ignorance. Silence is consent. You see, sitting there quietly, even if you don't agree, you've given that ignorance strength. So speak up. And the lack of treasuring all of the gifts that we share, giving away an opportunity to learn the path, to learn the steps, learn of a person. We're not so different. We love, we need, we wait. We wait for others to accept us for who we are. We practice for being strong, strong to endure strong words. We dream of a world where we all are as one. We understand, and racism is but a bad memory, and only a memory. We are the sugar in the milk, and only we can make the world sweet and rich and more desirable. Culture is not necessarily a black or a white thing. It's who I hang out with, what music I listen to. It has nothing to do with race, because the people I identify with what I like. Rub shoulders with someone. Become part of a bigger culture.
Love which shines around me like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change.